Most fun melee in 10.2. I am excited because melee is looking a lot better in 10.2 because of all the reworks that some of them are getting, because of the new tier sets that are elevating a lot of the specs. Not all of them, unfortunately, not all of them. Some of them are really fun and some of them really crank the DPS. Let's get into it really quick with arms as always, because that's in alphabetical order. Now, arms, I've tested it, okay? I've tested it, and unfortunately, I've tested it when the tier set was a little bit buggy. Thunderclap has some weird interactions that I think they might have been fixed since. However, I do want to mention that the tier set is actually kind of fun. It has to actually do probably a little bit more damage to kind of feel impactful, but it could be that I just played a very undertuned version of arms, or I'm just very terrible at the spec. Either way, numbers are always subject to change, and they will probably be properly balanced by the end, because arms right now is not doing too shabby. It's actually doing pretty well. Now, in terms of the overall playstyle, you're probably going to be playing a bleed type build. Obviously, the tier set works with putting bleeds from executes, which is really nice because it does give you more execute power. It doesn't give me those big fat executes, man, that I've always wanted. And considering that Shadow Priest is going to probably be the king in execute, it's just not acceptable. The king in execute is arms, has always been arms, should always be arms, and they're working slightly into getting that with a different kind of flavor with bleeds, and I can get behind that, especially with the Skull Splitter reworks and the Tides of Blood talent, I think it is, where you just, you know, suck up those bleeds. Well, you don't suck up those bleeds, right? You just make the bleeds tick harder. And with the Thunderclaps and additional applications of Ren, that could be pretty cool in single target at the very least. And obviously you have Thunderclap as a potential big source of damage in AoE for arms. Now that's new, but even with all of this, compared to everything else that's going on in 10.2, I do have to put arms into B tier. It's fun, don't get me wrong, and the damage is not a factor into me putting into B tier, because I always love playing arms regardless of the damage that it does. But okay, Thunderclap is nice, that's not really an arms thing, and I'm still not sold on the bleed playstyle yet, because we had bleed playstyles back in BFA where arms was doing most of its damage from deep wounds. That was not fun. What I miss, personally, what I find fun is Legion arms, where you just slap big numbers. When you hit Immortal Strike, stuff dies, right? Now, Assassination. Where should I begin? Well, listen, I will take my mouse, I will click on Assassination and drag it all the way into S tier, because goddamn Rogue is cranking, man. Listen, if you've been playing Assassination up until now, I salute you and much respect for playing a dog shit spec, because Assassination 10.2 is so not a dog shit spec. It's getting so much love. It is essentially probably the main reason why I am considering Rogue as a main. I haven't decided yet, and it wasn't a main candidate until I actually played the Rogue and, of course, seen those Kingsbane hits. Because goddamn, dude, it is really cool. A very, very bleed, a very, very poison-centric spec. Sanguinate is now something that I can play with, which was fantastic. And the capstones are really fun to interact with. Indiscriminate Carnage is way better now. I think Assassination can actually be a blast to even push keys with. Surely we've tested it in Mythic Plus so far, but, you know, PTR Mythic Plus is not always like the live Mythic Plus season, right? That things are gonna change. Numbers are gonna get tuned out. I mean, every week we're kind of seeing balanced tunes, and that's fine. And similar to Assassination, Outlaw is also cranked all the way up to 11, especially with the tier set, dude, because Outlaw is getting a gnarly tier set, which I personally love. Listen, I know not a lot of people are behind the pirate theme, and I know Marcelian is not a fan of the pirate theme, but even he agrees that Outlaw is an S tier spec in terms of fun, in terms of tier set. And sure, it is cranking right now in the numbers if you look at what people are doing in the PTR and dungeons and raids, but that's, you know, never going to stick around, so we'll see how it is. However, Rogue is a clear bar setter for every other spec that's going to be judged in terms of its fun. And speaking of bars that need to be set, survival. I have a confession to make. For the longest time in World of Warcraft, I have loved survival. In Dragonflight, I think it's dog shit. I think the talents are incredibly horrible, bland, boring, and an atrocious and an insult to players playing Survival Hunter when you look at Rogue. However, if I just have to judge survival based on its design, talents, and what it essentially builds as, I would put into C tier. The tier set, however, elevates it into A tier. Now, I have mixed feelings on Fury of the Eagle, and I still kind of want to bump it down a tier, but I think I have to give survival the love, the credit that it deserves. It's not that bad, okay? Listen, I don't like it whenever they constantly put bombs at the forefront of the spec's identity. Sure, that's one way that you can go. I think there's plenty of other ways that you can do it. Fury of the Eagle is one thing, but now they're also baking that with bombs, which, to be fair, makes bombs more interesting. I am not sure if we're gonna play Spearhead at all, certainly because of the current talent sets. I mean, unless Survival is getting a rework, you just have to spend a lot of points onto the left-hand side of the talent tree, where Spearhead is not. And usually you couple Fury of the Eagle with Coordinated Assault, specifically in AoE, not as much in single target, but looking at how people are playing Coordinated Assault and Fury of the Eagle right now, considering that Coordinated Assault will also buff your bombs. Now, I don't know if like timing them together will give you a lot of bombs. It sounds like they should work more together than Spearhead funnel into any of this, because you will be using Fury of the Eagle in single target, which, to be fair, I kind of like. Fury of the Eagle is a fun ability, and it is not designed to be a single target ability, and this is what tier sets should do. They should flip the switch, they should turn the tables, they should say, oh, listen, now you're gonna use this whenever you were not gonna use it before. So that's kind of where survival is. Plus, with the Hunter's Mark increase in buff, I do feel like I'm bringing more to my group, and it does factor into the fun aspect, and hopefully Survival learns from rogues and gets a talent rework at one point to bump it into S tier. But until then, A is probably as much as it's ever going to get, similar to Enhancement, because goddamn Enhancement is a slapping right now. I'm not talking about the damage, right? The Enhancement playstyle has been, you know, it's controversial, okay? It has a lot of button bloat and not a lot of people are behind it. I am, because I'm a masochist, okay? I like Sanguine and Necrotic, and I like Enhancement with 10,000 buttons. That being said, the changes that it's getting into 10.2 are elevating the spec more and more further. Again, kind of putting into contrast, I should probably put this in front of Survival actually, how old and antiquated Survival is in terms of its overall design. If it wasn't for Survival's fun kit, Enhancement would outclass it leagues above, but Enhancement is still really fun, right? They're constantly iterating on the talent positions and the pathings and all of that. Having wolves everywhere is just a blast, because I like wolves. Listen, we're going further away from wolves into cats, and that is Feral Druid. Now, in terms of the tier set Feral is getting, it is an elevated version of any kind of tier set that is getting so far. In 10.1, the tier set for Feral, it's atrocious. Whoever thought of it should rethink their life choices and look at the current Feral tier set, and if that's the same person, listen, good job, you learned. The current tier is really cool. It will make you 100% go into Feral Frenzy, and it's going to reduce the Feral Frenzy cooldown to 30 seconds. Now, Feral Frenzy is a fun ability. It fills up your combo slots. It is probably one of the only Feral abilities that actually sounds savage and reiki and bloody out of everything that you do, funny enough. Now, that's also going to be a damage amp of 20%, and because of its short cooldown and how burst works, you're probably going to be playing Convoke, which is fucking freaking fantastic. Dude, Convoke? Are you serious? With Feral Frenzy, with big bursts every, I guess, a minute? I don't know how we're going to have Convoke, but every time you're going to be pairing up Feral Frenzy with Convoke, that's going to be really fun. And considering that Feral is already basically fun, it's not as complex as Survival and Enhancement, but it's a simplistic kind of fun I particularly love. Give me more savagery, okay? Frost Decay has been tested by moi on the raid, where it's probably going to matter most, because in AoE it's always going to be fun, with Chill Streak, of course. Chill Streak is an amazingly fun ability. Now, the fact that it's all the way on the right-hand side is not something that I'm a fan of, because if you're going to take Chill Streak, and you will, because otherwise you will have no tier set, you're halfway to Breath of Sindragosa, which you probably might end up taking. You can, you know, not take Breath of Sindragosa and go into Obliteration, but you're kind of losing a bunch of investment points that you otherwise would have for Obliteration, that now that you have to put it on the right-hand side of the talent tree. I think Chill Streak should probably be moved somewhere in the middle, because it's like a middle ground playstyle. It doesn't really tie into Breath of Sindragosa that much. However, if you do end up playing Breath of Sindragosa, it's fun to have little Chill Streak windows in between. However, the fact that you're probably going to end up playing Breath of Zaragoza is a sucky point for me because I don't like to be forced into the same playstyle that I was forced to in for years. The fact that Frost DK has been able to play Obliteration for so long is the fun part. Now, I have also tested some of the raid bosses. They are not fun for Frost. I have to say, they are not fun for Frost. At least the ones that I probably maybe was unlucky to test. There are some, like the first one, Gnarlut, is pretty good. I think Gira is also pretty good, especially if you have to play Breath. You have a decent amount of uptime on her if you end up having to play Breath. But similar to Arms, I feel like it's lacking a lot, so I will put it into B tier because it is wonky. Could be good, it has potential, but it's way too wonky at this point. Fury Warrior is also another B tier spec. I've tested this as well in the PTR, and although I like the simplicity and bursty nature of Fury and the fact that Odin's Fury is back and kind of forces us into playing Annihilator, which is not something that we've been playing so far, it's actually dumbing down the spec a little bit too much for my taste. Listen, it's stupid to press well, I was gonna say Bloodthirst, but it's probably going to be Bloodbath because you're probably going to be playing Reckless Abandon, I think. I mean, I did so when I tested it, but I know they made some changes so that the interactions works a little bit better. So the fact that you're going to be pressing Bloodthirst, 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 Rampage, Bloodthirst, 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 Rampage, Odin's Fury, Bloodthirst, Bloodthirst, and so on and so forth. You're probably going to just be pressing these 3 buttons. That will probably get old for me. It's fun as a break every now and again to kind of do a little fun thing, but that's probably gonna get old really quickly, really fast. So that's why Fury unfortunately is in B tier. It's a fun playstyle, don't get me wrong, but as a potential, you know, candidate for something that I'm gonna be playing a whole season, like the fun diminishes a lot faster than, let's say, the A tier specs, which is not something that I can say for Havoc. Boom, also goes into A tier. I don't know where in the A tier Havoc will end up being. It's still undergoing its tuning for its current rework, but I am a fan of momentum. I am a fan of inertia, that what they're doing right now, and I'm a fan of spamming. I'm a fan of spamming Immolate Aura because that's really cool, and the rework is actually making the spec better, making it more modern, and it definitely feels close to what Rogue and Ret can do. And that's why it is A tier. And speaking of the culprit, Retribution Paladin, holy shit, dude. I know Marcelian is gonna... Actually, he might agree. Maybe he doesn't agree. The Rogue rework is probably slightly better than the current Ret rework-ish. We're not, you know, reworking Ret, but it did receive a recent rework. However, I do have to say that the Ret tier set is probably the most fun tier set currently for all melees in 10.2. It is hilarious to have double finishers for a spec that builds towards finishers next to other specs that build towards finishers. It is fun, not to mention that the Ret overall playstyle, so long as they don't nerf it, feels an incredible melee to play. I have played so much Ret, especially with the month of Ret that we played on stream on our Twitch channel. I discovered that the class is a lot more fun than I gave it credit because of its toolkits, because of its tankiness, and because of how fun the rotational damage is. I think Ret, for me right now, might be the most fun melee spec in the game, which is something that Marcelian always said, not something that I ever said before, but it's a good time. It's a good time. Now, subtlety as well. I was surprised at how well the rework for the Rogue went. And although I'm mostly an Assassination / Outlaw fanboy, the fact that subtlety is basically what I always thought subtlety to be. A really cool rogue spec that is probably the hardest to get into, and it feels like it's harder now than it has ever been in the last couple of years. And I am all for that. I like complexity. I like trying to figure things out and working towards perfecting stuff. I don't know. It's probably behind Ret. I would probably put it in front of Ret, but I think it cannot top Ret for me. But it is very, 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 very close into topping Ret. Dude, Gormaw's Bite is fucking amazing. I don't know, man. I don't know what they're doing to Rogue, and I don't know why they're not doing to everybody else. Other classes such as Unholy, which I have played with, I do have to say, I think it's the tier set is fun. Okay, I don't know where to put it yet. I'm gonna keep it hovered like this and mess up with Sunshade and Marcelian as they're editing the tier set because I don't know where to put it yet. Okay, the tier set is a lot more interesting in 10.2 and fun than it is right now in 10.1. It's not obvious to me that the playstyle will change. However, the changes that it did get are actually really good. Okay, I'm putting it to A tier. Because actually Unholy's damage profile is getting a big shift from its army playstyle into its 45-second cooldown playstyle, which is great because you're not going to be tied into Power Infusion and Augmentation Evoker, which is something that a lot of Unholies have been asking for, not being tied to external power sources that just blast its burst windows to crazy numbers, especially in single target. So now damages may be a little bit more rounded, not to mention Shadow Volley, enough said, okay? And Windwalker. Oh man, listen. I'm sorry, Windwalkers. Listen, I retain my point, and I know Marcelian agrees as well. Windwalker is one of the better designed specs in the game in terms of its concept. In terms of its execution, however, it is sorely lacking, and the tier set is just weird. Sure, they kind of fixed the melee auto attack issue, but it's still not enough. It's like when you look at what every other melee spec brings and how the fantasy of each other melee spec is, for me, Windwalker just doesn't bring it anymore. It used to be fun, it used to be cool, but now it's falling behind. It's kind of similar to Survival, where its talent tree seems slightly antiquated, although the talent tree is better than its Survival. However, I feel like Survival's playstyle just flows a little bit better. It doesn't hit the issues that Windwalker seems to hit, which is why Windwalker is a little bit down. I could probably put it into B tier, but I kind of want to put this out there that, you know, Windwalker just needs a little bit more love. And it does need a lot more love, and we've pointed this out in our Monk rework video that you can check, where we go over all of the Monk specs, of course, but of course touch on surprisingly many of the faults of Windwalker, especially in the modern era of World of Warcraft combat design. It has a lot of potential. Check it out.